Hello and welcome to the RPG Blender, where we give lesser played games and forgotten settings the roll of the dice they deserve. I'm your host, Game Master George, and today we are continuing our look at the problems of running horror games. In each video, we're taking a look at one of the problems that I find I've experienced when running a horror game, tackling how to solve that problem, and then talking about a game that I feel does a good job of addressing that problem in its setting or its system. If you've missed any of our past videos, click the link here or down in the description to take a look at our past guides. And make sure that you've subscribed and click that notification bell to be notified when our next videos go live. And if you'd like to see these tips put into action, go ahead and check out one of our actual play videos here on YouTube, or follow our Twitch channel at twitch.tv/rpgblender. We'll be doing some live gameplay soon, where you'll get to see these tips put into action. Now let's not waste any more time and dive into 5 hurdles of horror games. Maintaining the threat. There is a saying in the RPG community that if it has hit points, it can die. That is, unfortunately, a big problem when it comes to horror games, as anything that you throw at your players, they can approach with the mindset of, it has stats, it's going to be killable. So all we need to do is do what we normally do and run up and take turns swinging at it until it goes down, or we do when we make new characters. In a normal game, this is probably what you'd expect and what your players signed up for. You might have a fighter in your group who came in to kill monsters, and there's nothing wrong with that. In a normal RPG game, going out and hunting down monsters is a perfectly acceptable way to run your game. However, in a horror game, when you can kill everything that you come across, there's no reason for your players to be afraid of it. So looking at the werewolf idea that we started on last time, how would your players approach dealing with the problem? Would it be to investigate the issue, see if there's some kind of cure to the curse, or would they see a werewolf and run at it with their weapons and attempt to kill it? What we need to try to do is find a way to promote the first line of thinking and discourage the run-in guns blazing attitude. Now, how can you fix that? Well, yes, you could just kill them. You could just have them run in and demonstrate to them that this thing is too strong and it's going to murder you by, well, murdering them. However, at that point, your players are no longer having fun, as the characters that they have spent so long on have died and you have to spend the next hour and a half making new characters. Much better instead to show them that this creature is something beyond what they've dealt with before, or that they might be used to dealing with in their other games. To demonstrate the fact that this is not something that they can tackle head-on. Part of this should be handled at session 0. As we've discussed earlier, you should let your players know that not every monster is going to be fightable, that they should be looking for ways to approach a problem that doesn't revolve around rushing in guns blazing. But it shouldn't stop there. You shouldn't give them that warning and then trust that they're going to remember it and actually heed it. Instead, what you need to do is you need to start making clues as to the fact that this monster is not something that they can deal with normally. There are the standard ways of doing this, like, for instance, having them witness it demolishing a very strong fighter, someone that they've witnessed as a powerful combatant being taken down in moments by this creature. But they might just see that as a chance for them to up their reputation. In the end, your players are probably going to want to fight it, and they're going to try to. And that's when you need to color the moment with clues as to this monster's incapability of being defeated through normal means. So for starters, you do not need to have an entire stat block for this monster. In fact, I would strongly recommend not having a hit point or defensive stats for it at all. What you will need are the offensive stats for when they attack and the monster has to counterattack. These attacks that they have should be nearly overwhelming. They should be designed to show them that fighting this thing head-on is not going to be a viable solution. So why do we not have any defensive stats? Well, quite frankly, it's because we don't want them to kill the monster with attacks. As we've said, this is not the goal of a horror game. Something that can be overcome with mundane means is not as scary. So when your players attack it, and it has no defensive stats, what do? Well, instead of consulting your sheet, you simply narrate why the attack does no damage. In the case of a spirit or other intangible creature, the weapon simply slides through the place where it seems to occupy. Or in case of the werewolf adventure that we've been building, perhaps the weapon simply bounces off of its hard hide, or digs into the flesh, which then instantly regrows around it. These moments serve to show the players that this normal method of attack is not going to work. They might not get it at first, of course, but after a few rounds of doing 0 damage trying to attack it, they will get the message that this is not the right way to be handling the situation. Meanwhile, the creature is going to be counterattacking. These attacks should be designed to debilitate, not to kill. This is the learning encounter for your players to combat it, find that their normal methods are not going to work, and then regroup to find a better solution. As such, you don't want to kill them here. Instead, you want to deal them blows which seem like they're going to be horrific and have some negative consequences, but are not actually going to murder them. Now, let's say it's a spirit attacking. Instead of dealing necrotic damage, instead your player gets attacked by it, and they feel it insinuating itself into their mind. They feel memories being erased, rewritten with moments of horror from the spirit's own life. This is an intangible attack, something that's not going to kill them, but is going to drive home the point of this is a dangerous creature. They're going to start to worry what is going to happen when the last of my memories are erased. And if they're playing their character like a character and not just a walking stat block, they're going to care when their memories start going away. Utilizing the werewolf hunt, rather than doing just straight hit point damage, focus on debilitating injuries. Maim their leg, giving them a slower move speed. Injure their arm, taking away some of their attack bonus or damage. Do subdual damage as it throws them around the arena, knocking them unconscious eventually, but not actually killing them. At some point after that, the combat needs to end and your players need to regroup. How can you end it? Well, ideally, your players should be ending it themselves by getting away from the creature. However, build in a timer to the encounter. In the case of the werewolf, it's easy enough. Whatever the condition was for its transformation is coming to an end, so it flees to a safe place where it can complete its transformation back into human form without being seen. In the case of a spirit or other kind of vengeful entity, whatever is the target of its ire is now up and active, and they seek to hunt it instead of the players. Let the players get out of the fight being bruised and emotionally scarred, but not dead. At that point, the investigation begins. They need to find a way to deal with this creature outside of the combat. This is where the mystery that we talked about last time comes in. You establish a weakness for your werewolf. Could be the normal silver and wolfsbane, but if you want to actually make something more mysterious, as we talked about last time, link here if you missed it, you give it a weakness that they'll be able to investigate. Those kinds of weaknesses which your players will need to find and then utilize in order to actually beat this creature. Now, what if they don't learn the lesson? Well, if they don't learn the lesson, then you need to not pull the punches the next time around. That's when the actual damage starts flying. That's when you're going to start losing PCs. If they don't learn the lesson, then unfortunately they're going to find that your monster does indeed have teeth. And at that point, it is perfectly fine to kill a player character or two. So to recap, when building out your monster, don't give it defensive stats. Defensive stats promote your players trying to actually beat the thing through normal means. Do give it offensive abilities, but have those offensive abilities be ones that will slow and debilitate the players rather than killing them. Have the first encounter end prematurely, either by your players running away or by a timer which causes your monster to leave the scene. And finally, give your players clues as to a solution, a weakness that this monster has, which will allow them to take a different approach to defeating it. Now, what game do I think captures the threat of combat very well? That game would be Don't Rest Your Head. Don't Rest Your Head is a very interesting game where you play as an insomniac who has been awake so long that they have fallen between the cracks of the world. It's very Neverwhere if you've ever seen that series. The player characters, as long as they're awake, now exist between worlds, able to see the hidden mad city, and developing talents which threaten to drive them insane. Within this mad city, there are countless horrific threats, from Officer Tak to Mother Wen, and they are all legitimate threats. There are no hit points for your enemy. There are no real stats for your enemy except for pain. See, the way that this system works is your players roll a number of d6s equal to their discipline, plus their exhaustion, plus their madness. Discipline is their, well, sanity. All your players will start out with 3, and when they run out of discipline, that is the end, as they have fallen to their madness. Their exhaustion dice represent their exhaustion. As they grow more tired from their insomnia, they become more powerful in this weird sleeping world. If they ever max out their exhaustion, they fall asleep, and the monsters that they have been fighting are free to hunt them without them having any ability to defend themselves. On the off chance that they survive, they awaken diminished until they have managed to stay awake for a time equal to how long they've been asleep. And finally, the madness dice. Madness represents how much they have given into the madness of this world. As they use their madness talent, they'll be forced to roll madness dice in order to enact the strange consequences. Whenever they make a challenge, they roll their total pool of discipline, exhaustion, and madness. 1s, 2s, and 3s are successes. They total up the number of successes that they have and compare that to the difficulty that you've rolled with your pain dice. Pain represents the strength of the monster that they are fighting. If there are more successes on the player's side than on the pain dice, then the players succeed in their action. If there are less, then they do not. But that is not where this system shines. Where it serves as an example of this concept is with the dominating pool effect. See, not only are you counting successes, you're checking to see which pool has the highest number shown on one of its dice. Whichever has the highest number is the pool that dominates the scene. If discipline dominates, then your players have escaped from that challenge without much of an impact, as their sanity has controlled the scene. But if their exhaustion dominates, they get a little more tired, adding another exhaustion die to their pool, making any of their future successes more likely as they have an extra die, but increasing the likelihood that exhaustion will dominate. And of course, when they max out their pool of exhaustion dice, they fall asleep, and that is likely the end of their character. If madness dominates, it activates their fight or flight reaction. Your players will have 3 checkboxes which they spread across fight and flight. If madness dominates, they check off one of those and must react for the remainder of the scene as if that urge was controlling them. When all of their boxes get checked, they lose a point of discipline and add a point of permanent madness. And finally, if pain dominates, something bad happens, and you add a coin of despair. These coins can be used to add a 6 to any dice pool that you, the game master, decide. This allows you a chance to be able to twist which stat dominates the roll. Now, once you spend it, it becomes a coin of hope for your players to use. They can add extra successes. So why does this capture the feeling that I was trying to go for with this video? It's with that mechanic of dominating dice pools. You see, every single dice roll has a chance for one of their bad pools to dominate. This means that anything that they do, any action, any time that they're forced to roll dice, it is a chance of going horrifically wrong for them. This makes your players paranoid about having to roll those dice, making them think smarter about the situations that they get into, trying to avoid combats until they are certain that it's necessary and possible to win. It creates a downhill slide for your players where every roll that they make can add to their permanent pool of exhaustion or madness and eventually drive them into death. As such, they have to be very, very careful about when they are choosing to take an action which is going to cause them to roll dice. To help them along the way, they have exhaustion and madness talents. An exhaustion talent is something somewhat mundane, which they can tap into their physical exhaustion in order to become better at. Meanwhile, the madness is something truly out there, crazy abilities that they can do, which are probably supernatural in origin. But using them taps into the madness within their world and drives them closer to that end. Each of these present the temptation of amazing powers while continuing that downward slide into death. So anyway, I hope that this has been helpful for you. When you're trying to approach your own game, remember to make your enemies and the challenges themselves cost something. When your players are choosing to approach a problem, choosing to throw dice at it, make sure that they understand that there are consequences to doing so. Make them pick and choose their battles, knowing that any fight they end up in could be their last. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope this helps you as you embark on your journey into horror games. If you enjoyed it, please like, comment, subscribe, but most important, keep watching. We have our actual play podcast series here on YouTube if you'd like to check it out, as well as some other tutorials on how to run games as a game master. We want to try to create content which is going to help you to run games, to expand your horizons beyond the normal Dungeons and Dragons. So if there's anything that you'd like us to cover, please let us know in the comments below. And remember, if you'd like to see some of these tips live, check out our Twitch channel at twitch.tv/rpgblender. We'll be having some live events coming up this month, so go ahead and follow that channel to be notified when those occur. Anyway, thank you again, and remember, there's gaming outside the Forgotten Realms.
Is this thing on? If anyone's out there, please, we're in grave danger. The ship is failing, we haven't much time left. Please, we'll try to reach out again on October 24th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you're there, go to twitch.tv/rpgblender and be ready for our final transmission.